And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sturtevant.
Well, hey there, listener, and welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. So I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. At what age did you start to have your first political thoughts? Well, I had my first political thoughts in 1968. I was 7 years old, but I lived in a family that was very tuned in to what was going on in the world, which I'm grateful for. And 1968 was one of these epic years. I mean, I was just a 7-year-old running around just being a kid. But events that were outside of my house kept imposing themselves upon me, and I really developed an awareness out of necessity just because the world outside of my house seemed to be on fire. In April of that year, Martin Luther King was assassinated. Just a few weeks later, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. The Democratic Convention took place in Chicago and was a battle between police and demonstrators and on TV constantly. But here's what I really remember. I remember the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City that year. And there were all these amazing African American athletes that were just setting world record after world record in the altitude of Mexico City. And after one of these spectacular performances, the gold medal winner, Black American, stands on the podium, puts a black glove on, bows his head, and puts his fist in the air. Now, I remember my father, who was a proud World War II vet, was watching that, and my dad's an open-minded guy, and I remember I could look on his face was, he was really troubled by the fact that he was doing this, but I remember what he said. He said, "Oh boy, man, this is going to stir the pot." And stir the pot it did. But as a 7-year-old, I can remember thinking, I wonder why he's doing that. What's his motivation? I wonder what's going on there. I remember that. Unfortunately, with this controversy that has been stirred up over the last number of days with the National Anthem and athletes kneeling during the National Anthem, I don't think many people have that 7-year-old Jimmy Sturtevant, I wonder what's going on there mentality. I think a lot of us are in pitch camps just screaming at each other. So this episode, which I dearly love, man, I dearly love this episode. This episode is designed to help teachers navigate these perilous waters. And to do this, I have a edu gladiator. I got a champion, man. Her name is Marlena Gross Taylor. She's the founder of Edu Gladiators, as well as a district ed leader in Nashville, Tennessee. She has a proven track record of improving educational and operational performance through vision, strategic planning, leadership, and team building. A Nashville transplant originally from southern Louisiana, Marlena's education experience spans several states, allowing her to have served K-12 students in both rural and urban districts, including Atlanta, Georgia, and Hickory, North Carolina. She's been recognized as a middle school master teacher and innovative administrator at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Because of her sound knowledge of both elementary and secondary education, Marlena has broad-based experiences creating and implementing dynamic, interactive programs to attain district goals. She's a proud LSU Tiger. She's committed to excellence and believes all students can achieve. And then I'm going to have lots of links about her on the show notes. I got to know Marlena because I was on her Edu Gladiators Twitter chat. And her and I had such a good time on that I went to visit my brother in Nashville last spring, and my wife and I had breakfast with her. It was a blast. And ever since then, we talk all the time. She's just one of those people that you bond with. So buckle up. I mean, really buckle up. Please buckle up. You're going to need to buckle up because you're going to love this episode, and you need to be buckled up. Hey, so get this, listener. My publisher contacts me and says, I love the way Hacking Engagement is selling. How about doing 50 more? I was all over it like a cheap suit. So the name of the book is Hacking Engagement Again, 50 Teacher Tools That Will Make Students Love Your Class. And it's going to be available on Amazon's virtual shelves in the late summer of 2017. In the meantime, if you're looking for more teacher empowerment resources, as always, visit hacklearning.org. Now let's get back to the solutions part of the Hacking Engagement podcast. So here I am in the Room 111 studios. Man, I got to tell you something. I like to say that I have a face that was made for podcasting. But my guest today, man, she's got a face that was made for prime time.
Oh, you're too sweet.
This is Marlena Gross Taylor. Good morning, young lady.
Good morning. How are you, friends?
And I'm not talking about late night television or early morning. It's prime time.
I love it.
So here's the deal, man. You know, last week, this whole National Anthem controversy descended on this country. And, you know, I'm a political person. I have my political views, but that is certainly not the purpose of this episode whatsoever. I think teachers need help. I mean, I think they need help navigating these rhetorical minefields, like these issues that can come up in class, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? So I knew I needed help. I needed help to help other educators navigate this. And so contacted you last weekend.
Yes, you did. Great conversations.
Yeah, and she's just like the perfect person to talk to. And so I think you're going to love this episode. Man, I was really excited about doing it. And the reason I called Marlena, and by the way, Marlena, total sidebar, the high temperature today in Columbus, Ohio is going to be 64 degrees.
Oh, wow.
They're in a cloud in the sky. This is awesome football weather.
Yes, it is.
And I checked on Weather Bug, in Nashville is going to be just a little warmer. I mean, this is the time of year to talk football, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely. Every day is the time of year to talk football.
Well, listen, to set this conversation up, I want to tell you a little bit about Marlena, and you need to jump in a lot. My audience needs to know, first of all, you're an African American.
I am. Very much so. But even that, I have layers, so I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay, number two, man, you're a football mom, and I wouldn't be surprised if Junior did some business on the gridiron last night. He do some business on the gridiron?
He sure did. He represented so well, literally carried his team to a win. They are undefeated, and they will be back-to-back champs this season, no doubt about it.
So you're African American, you're a football, and what's really interesting is you're going to be a Navy mom. So explain that.
Gosh, I feel like I have so many layers. I want to jump back, if you don't mind, to actually just being an African American, because the reason why I wanted to do this podcast too, and I know we're going to jump into the meat of it in just a little bit, but even that statement, that doesn't completely define who I am, because that is the majority, no doubt. But my grandmothers, my great grandmothers on my mom's side, one was full-blood Cherokee and the other full-blood Sioux. And my mother remembers when she was younger, both of her grandmothers, speaking the native language of those Indian tribes, those Native American tribes, and telling stories. And so I have that. And if for those of you that are listening, just look at a picture and you'll be able to see the high cheekbones and even probably a little bit of redness in my skin.
Wow.
From that. And then on my dad's side is very much mixed with black and white. My great grandfather, my grandfather's dad, was actually a white man. And he married a black woman who also had heavy Native American in her. And he actually had to change his name to add an extra S to it. My maiden name is Gross. And so there are a set of white Grosses or Grosses with Gros. And then when my grandfather married a black woman, he had to add an extra S to delineate the two lines of Grosses. So when you start off with, yes, of course, I'm proud to be black. Yes, that's what I am. But even with that, it's so many layers and so many stories. And it has given me such great perspective, especially with the topic at hand that we're going to talk about. So just know that for those of you that are listening, lots of layers here.
Wow. I did not know that, man. That's awesome. So we're talking a lot of variables.
A lot of variables. Enough where I could have gone to college free for just saying that I have enough Native American blood in me. So
have you done the National Geographic Genome Project where you send in a little bit of spit and you find out all the...
I did.
Oh, you did?
Actually, I did. And so the African part of me is actually Ethiopian.
I'll be darned.
Through the years.
Cool, man. That's cool.
So, I'm just a smorgasbord of these amazing cultures, but I really think we all are too. And so it's just a matter of us understanding that, that we're not just one thing first, but recognizing, our heritage and our culture is super, super important. And that's many of us have different cultures even that intertwine in our families.
Okay. So you're coming at this, you're looking at this image from a very diverse ethnic standpoint. I think we talked a little bit about you being a football mom, but talk about the
absolutely. So, awesome. And this again goes into what we're going to talk about. My oldest son, he's a senior, and he committed to playing football at Navy, and he is going to major in marine biology, which I think at Navy translates to oceanography, engineering, something along those lines. And when I tell people, or when he shared the news that he was committing to Navy, he had lots of great offers, tons of great offers. Super smart kid. And when he shared that he was choosing the Navy, there were quite a few eyebrows raised, like, really? Well, he'll have to serve. He won't be able to go straight into the NFL. And so I love being able to have that opportunity to share with people, and kind of break those stereotypes. Well, the NFL is not the end game. No, that's not the end game. Making an impact and being set up for a fantastic life as an adult and as a good person, that's the end game. And, beautiful. And that's something that I, love to be able to share about and to help people like put their eyebrows back down and understand that yes, I'm a football mom and our family plays football and we do that really well, but that's not all who we are. And sometimes when we're looked at and we are a minority, we are Black, that people think it's all about the sports, and it's not. We're not one-dimensional like that,
So next fall, Daniel Taylor, your son, is going to be part of the finest Navy in the world,
absolutely,
the finest military in the world, protecting you and me and everyone in this country from harm. Mm-hmm. That's another layer of what we're going to be talking about today. And Marlena, it drives me insane how people want to make this a simplistic issue.
You can. And that's, just for me, taking a little bit of time to just explain, who I am and, and then who my son is and why he's made this decision. We can't talk about the flag or race or any of these diversity as in a one-dimensional context, because there's so many layers. Like, for instance, with the whole flag thing, a lot of people, and I respect people's right to protest, period. Right. Because if people didn't protest, then you and I wouldn't be talking right now, probably, because we would still be like it was back when our parents grew up, Right. But when we think about that, you have to understand that when people look at the flag and many think of the ideals of America, and I believe that the protest has really nothing to do with the servicemen and women, the people that have sacrificed so much for us to be able to live like we live, and for people to protest as they do. It's really about America, and that flag symbolizes, and if you listen to the national anthem, the land of the free, home of the brave. And when you have groups of people, especially such a large majority that literally built this nation off the sweat of their back, that continue to be marginalized, it doesn't feel free.
Well,
it just doesn't feel free.
What I think so interesting about this is, and I'm going to go off a little bit here, and I think you're going to like this. I mean, it's so complicated because you can go into the African American community and there are people who really don't like that those guys kneel during the national anthem.
Yes.
You can go into the military and find people who have no problem with these folks kneeling during the national anthem. There was a guy on Twitter that is like 93 or 94
I saw
years
that.
old.
Yes. Was a World War II vet.
Yeah, it's like those kids got every right to. So it's so complicated. And then you add on to that this concept that you take the NFL, which is probably 60 to 65% African American. Mm-hmm. You look in the stands, it's probably 90% white.
Exactly.
And so you have this wide gulf between the fans and the players. And so,
even the owners.
And so the one thing that I'm going to give Colin Kaepernick and Donald Trump a lot of credit for is they got us talking. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think that was, I don't know what the motivations are of another person. I don't try to pretend that I do, but that is one very interesting byproduct of this.
It is. And you know what? What's really exciting about this right now is that I do feel the NFL has an incredible opportunity to lead some social change because sports and politics have always intersected over the years. Yep. Always. Mm-hmm. So they have a great opportunity to lead some social changes that I think need to happen. But then also, we have to be able to, as educators, we have to be fearless enough. Uh-huh. We have to be edugladiators and talk about this with our kids, because if we try to ignore it or think that our kids aren't talking about it or they don't need to talk about it or we don't need to go there, they're already there.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there because we're shifting gears right now. You and I have been talking big picture. Now it's time to get specific. And I'm confident you're going to really be on board with what I say right now. It is so hard to get people out of their boat and to look at things from another perspective. That is the challenge. And so that's what we're going to try to talk about today. And I'm going to tell you, I think you'll remember this, a conversation we had last summer. You know, I called Marlena up last summer, and I'm troubled by something, and I'm trying to work my way through something. It's a classic situation, a white person who has grown up a pretty, I don't want to say isolated, but just kind of in an existence where there was a lot of people who looked and thought like them, moves to the inner city, teaches urban kids, and struggles mightily communicating with them, bonding with them, understanding them. And you laid a term on me that I just thought was outstanding. It really motivated me. The phrase, I should say, is code switching.
Yes.
And you talked to me a little bit about that. I don't think this is on enough teachers' radar, this concept, this phrase of code switching. And it is instrumental in discussing a topic as contentious as this in the classroom. So I'd like you to yak a little bit about code switching.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can yak all day long about this. Because
flip the switch, baby.
Yeah, get ready. Let's go. The reason why though is because this is the norm for minorities if they truly want to be successful. And I believe in the U.S., in corporate America, with the ranks of leadership and education. When we moved here to Tennessee 10 years ago, we didn't know a soul. We didn't know a soul here when we moved. And to come into the school district that I was in, very affluent, one of the 13th most affluent county in the country. I mean, uber rich. And here I am, this outsider coming in, and I'm Black. And I go, I move into leadership. I have all credentials to do so, but I was constantly asked, how did you move up so fast, or who are you, or where are you? How did you get to this point, or how did you get in the door? Mm-hmm. And it was the art of code switching. My parents, who grew up in a very segregated Southern Louisiana environment, always taught us that you have to, your speech, your actions, your dialect, the tone, your inflection, that all has to change when you leave the house, when you're not at home, when you're not with family. when you're out at school, because my school, of course, was predominantly white where I grew up. When you go out into a job, you have to switch, and you have to talk more like them.
Yeah.
And you have to learn the art of being able to switch back and forth with your speech, with your word choice, all of those things. You have to learn how to do that. And so I feel that the reason that I was able to be successful so quickly was because I had been well versed in the art of code switching, simply by my parents being such great influences on me, and how I grew up and having such great practice in doing so. And then as I stayed in leadership in this particular district, and I think as you get older, you become a little bit more reflective too. I realized that, you know what, I should have never had to do that.
No.
I should have never had to.
That sounds very stressful.
It is. It is. I should have never had to downplay I am.
Right.
Where
your default.
Everything makes me Marlena, just to make my white counterparts or my white supervisors feel more comfortable.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to answer my own question, but I'm interested in your answer. Do you think that white Americans appreciate this?
No, I don't even think they understand it happens.
I don't either. I mean, I really don't. I don't think that they get this. I don't think that they understand this at all.
They don't, and I'm going to be very transparent. Even just look at my name, Marlena.
Right.
My parents, again, grew up in segregated times.
Look at your last name.
Look at my last name, right? And how that all happened. Yeah. So many stories there. Yeah. But my mom and dad said, they told us, because I have two brothers, Mark and Chris, and they said that when we were having you guys, we were not going to name you names where someone will look at your application, and automatically know that you were black.
Have you seen those studies?
Right?
If you send in an application with an African American sounding name, it's not.
That's right. And this was way back. I won't say how far back, because then I'm not 28.
Yeah.
But this was way back in the day. And my mom and dad had this foresight, but their parents had that same foresight, because my mom's name is Joyce and my dad's name is Willie. So they had that same foresight of wanting their kids to have a fighting chance in society. So they were even code switching with the name, and I can't be 100% sure that when I put in my first application, when we moved here, that they didn't assume, because my name is Marlena and I went to LSU, that I wasn't white. So the code switching is key, I think, to, unfortunately, it's a critical skill that many of our kids, especially in inner city, they might lack if their parents haven't been taught that or feel that that's important. But let me tell you how important this code switching is, and the art of being able to do so. W.E. Du Bois actually alluded to this whole theory of duality among blacks in his piece, The Souls of Black Folk. He actually talked about how blacks have to have a double consciousness to exist in their black society and then to exist in their European society or with whites. He talked about that, okay? And that it was a critical skill that, yes, blacks needed to know how to read, but they also needed to know how to transform into standard English speech with the same cadence and inflection that whites use. So I'll go back to my boys. I did the same thing. Their names are Daniel and Colin, right? And I've told this to them. I don't want anybody to ever make assumptions based on your name before they even see you and get to know you and have conversations.
Does that make you mad?
Again, when I was younger and had them, I was following the lead of my parents. I'm so grateful I did. But as I've gotten older, again, I do feel I should not have had to do that. Yeah, it does anger me. It does make me very upset. But you know what? If I would not have done that, I do feel that it would have been a little bit harder road for my boys to be as successful as they've been in their school, in their community, and now in football.
Well, Marlena, I am. I mean, you've seen me. I mean, I'm a pretty unthreatening person. I drive around in a 96 Honda Civic. I could drive down Main Street of our town, probably 10 miles over the speed limit, and no one would bat an eye because of the way I look, what I'm driving, and I'm telling you, I don't think that African Americans have that same sense of nonchalance. There's always that layer of awareness that has to be there that I think sounds exhausting.
Well, I'll tell you this, if you remember, and I know you know your history, when the Native American lands were being taken over, they were taking the young kids and putting them in boarding schools and not allowing them to speak their language and cutting their hair, which is huge for, Native American groups cutting their hair.
I recently watched Jim Thorpe All-American. that very scene that you're talking about was being played out. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so America, the U.S. has been trying to help the minorities assimilate into white.
There's that word. There's that word. That was my next question, is assimilation. Now right out of the chutes, this concept of taking this issue and looking at it from a different perspective is pretty deep and pretty layered. And now we're going to get into that powerful word assimilation. Now, let me tell you, I'm sure you know this already, but when you lay this on a white person, the word assimilation, they might conjure up some positive things, like the melting pot. It's what make America great, It's just like bringing everybody together, and we all kind of blend together, and we all have this, like a tapestry society. That isn't the way that word necessarily translates in the African American community, is it?
Not at all. Yeah. When I think of, well, first of all, when I think of assimilation, I think of me having to give up something.
Surrender.
I have to surrender to lay down.
Yeah.
And so part of that assimilation means having to, again, lessen who I am, what I bring to the table, to make others feel more comfortable. It's not an absorption cultures. That word doesn't for most minorities, I don't think.
It's more conformity, isn't it?
It's more about conformity. It's not an absorption of different cultures and to create that melting pot. So even that word, I think, is probably one that we should probably use or do away with.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Man.
It's not something that we want to say. I'm a Star Trek person too. I know. See, that would be a surprise to most people because I'm black and I love Star Trek. Literally have a book. Hey.
My first crush was Lieutenant Uhura.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, I like the original series, and like when I think about those women walking around with miniskirts on, like that's supposed to be a military uniform.
Back in the day, it was. So in
total sidebar.
In the Next Generation, one of the main adversaries of the Federation is I'm having a geek moment right now. Is the Borg, and the Borg were taking over. Taking over all the different cultures, tried to take over the Federation, and they were assimilating. They used that word, resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. And I just think, part of the genius of Gene Roddenberry and that whole thing is how they take issues that are happening in our world, in our country right now, and putting it in that space of fiction and trying to help people see and relate and see their mistakes and why we need to do better and why we need to be better. So when I think of assimilation, I think, resistance is futile. Like that is maybe the sidebar of that word. And we can't resist, or we can't stop resisting. We have to keep fighting. And I think, back to the flag, back to, we have to have our teachers take some type of diversity training so they can understand where the kids are coming from. Amen. We cannot assimilate. Resistance is not futile.
Okay, now I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. So we talked about code switching, something that a lot of white Americans are pretty unaware of, need to become more aware of in order to have an effective conversation about this subject. Definitely need. That's a need. We talked about assimilation, how this word means different things to different groups in this country. And a lot of it's not positive. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. So you're a teacher, and you know darn well. I mean, everybody that I've talked to has an opinion on this issue. Everyone is tuned into this thing, this national anthem thing. You know your kids want to talk about it. But you're kind of reluctant as a teacher to go there because you just don't know where it's going to end and how it's going to manifest itself. How would you proceed?
So here's the thing: I've had conversations like this, particularly when I was a teacher in Atlanta, and I very much had gangs in my classroom, Bloods, Crips.
Wait, hold on. You taught in Atlanta.
I taught in Gwinnett County schools, which in the area in Gwinnett that I taught in was their urban area. About 180,000 kids in that district, so it's pretty big. And so I taught where the diversity was there, and I had Bloods, Crips, Hispanic gangs, all those there. And so I have done this, and so why I was able to do this and be successful, and why they did not want me to ever leave that school ever, was because I also understand the power of relationships. You can have these conversations with your kids. You must have these conversations with the kids. But you can't have it if you don't have an authentic relationship with your kids.
Right.
So in my classroom, when we would talk about when things would come up, you have to understand as a teacher when you have to call an audible. You're going to have a timeout. You're going to bring these kids together because if these issues are on their mind, world issues, things going on at that time, that was when the Hispanic population, they were really, really being beat down about their contribution and being illegal in our country and wanting to go back. And they even had a national, protest where many of the Hispanics didn't go to their jobs, and so many things were shut down because their workforce is such a critical part of our country. But anyway, we had to talk about that. So we couldn't talk about language arts. We could talk about social studies. We couldn't talk about science because we needed to talk about what was happening in the world. And so I think as teachers, if you have a positive, authentic relationship with your kids, then you can gather them together. And we literally sat in a circle. Okay, all these huge 8th graders. Right? In a circle, crisscross applesauce. And I set the parameters. We're going to be respectful. We're going to be respectful. We're going to have everyone be able to speak. And then we're not going to be offended. We're going to listen. And then we're going to come up with a way to make it better. We're going to be solution-oriented.
Two things I want to jump in on. Number one, you made a powerful statement because this means actually making education relevant. And so, you have a choice. You
do.
Can you have them read Great Expectations, which I had to read my freshman year, and I hated every second of it and just screwed around the whole time? Or do you want to talk about something that's right now, that's going to impact their lives? So you have that choice. You're saying, go for the right choice. Go for the relevancy. That doesn't mean that you're not going to look at the book, but you gotta seize the moment.
As my friend Bethany Hill in Arkansas always says, you have to put kids over curriculum every time. Every time you have to start there. And so for me, that wasn't a hard thing to do. And then what I did, and you can bring curriculum in once you have level set and you've addressed those issues with the kids. We actually went right to reading, and this wasn't part of the curriculum. It wasn't the scope, scope and sequence pacing guide. We read The Outsiders. We read The Outsiders. And before we read every day, okay, whatever that chapter or those chapters we were reading, whatever the social topic was, we sat down in a circle in the middle of the floor and we talked about the issue, whether it was racism, whether it's discrimination, sexism, whatever it might have been. We talked about it for a solid 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, Marlena, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I know you don't like to answer these questions, but how many years ago was that?
Let me think. I've been here 10 years. This was right at 12 years ago.
Okay, so those kids were, say, 14 years old. So let's fast forward. Now they're 26 years old. Mm-hmm. I bet they remember that. I bet they remember that experience. So you had a situation where they could read a book or whatever that they ain't gonna remember. But I'll bet you those kids remember that experience. That's the impact that teaching relevant issues like this can have.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I'm gonna go off here for a second, and I think you'll find this interesting. And I'll bet you'll agree with me, but I never make assumptions. And the thing that I think was so disheartening last weekend was if someone in my class discussion calls someone a son of a bitch, mm-hmm. their participation in the discussion is ended. And so I'm going to take issue with Donald Trump because he didn't need to say that. And that doesn't help. Now, I understand why he said that because it really fires people up. It's very attention-grabbing. I understand why he said it. And it might actually help him in the short run, in the long run. Who knows? But it doesn't help when the president uses that kind of language. Here's what I would have done if I was Donald Trump. I think you can make a darned good argument on why people should stand for the national anthem. I don't think it's hard to do at all. Yeah. And what I thought about was Eddie Robinson, mm-hmm. the legendary coach at Grambling from the 40s all the way up to the 90s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know that he had to deal with this issue mm-hmm. all the time. It's not like something that just happened last year when Colin Kaepernick took a knee. And his response was, and it's total code switching, is you have to do that because you don't want that to be the first thing people know about you. They'll turn you off. They won't listen to you. Mm-hmm. So you got to stand up. That's my rule. You got to stand up. Now, I would have respected Donald Trump for doing that. You know, instead he went his route, which I didn't agree with. Well, the way he handled that. But I think it would have been really interesting if he would have made that powerful argument instead.
So I have two things about that comment. You know, first of all, like I was mentioning before, like how we would have that time and kids, you know, did disrespect each other, you know, mm-hmm. at times. And we had to, in that circle, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about it, you know, mm-hmm. because you can't.
I bet that wasn't easy. It
wasn't easy for the kids, but they had, we did not move until we settled it because you have to respect each other even if you don't agree, and you can't call people out of their names, you know. And a lot of times, many of the kids, because I had so many cultures there, right, even with the three main groups that I had in my class, they didn't understand how they were being offensive to the other all the time. Some things they knew they would say that would, you know, incite a reaction.
Get a rise.
Many times they just didn't, and they didn't take time to know each other to see, like, hey, this kid isn't half bad, or this kid, we have a lot of similarities, you know. So those conversations have to happen. Right. And then, you know, fortifying that conversation with a book like The Outsiders, the kids could see themselves in the two groups in that book. So there's that. When you have anyone in a position of leadership, when they lose moral focus,
right,
when they start calling people out of their names, it makes it really, really tough as an educator to tell kids not to do that.
Yes,
because they're like, well, I heard this teacher did it, or this principal, or in our case now, the president did it, so it must be okay. So, you know, we have to advocate even more, like, and teach our kids that is so not okay. And
hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you remember the Super Bowl a few years back when George Bush, Republican president, came on and was talking about how important it was for the athletes to be role models? Do you remember that? Do you remember that public? All right, yep. So that goes for presidents too.
It absolutely does, and
more so.
You know, really more so. Even with his comment, even with his choice of words, you know, most people probably just thought, like, well, you can't. That's like using just like a random cuss word, like it's a bad word. Like you can't call somebody like out of their name as a son of a bitch. You know, or sons of bitches is how I think he said it. But if you break that down, and I'm gonna add the ethnic perspective.
Yeah.
In the black community, the worst thing you can do is call somebody's mama a bitch. You talk about somebody's mama, you are asking for trouble. And I think people are just now starting to report on that in the news, that his comment just wasn't like,
No,
He
it was
loaded
it was a
many
thermonuclear
levels
device,
because
man.
he's essentially calling black moms bitches.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'll tell you one thing, just to add another layer of diversity to this. Colin,
Exactly.
Colin Kaepernick's
Exactly.
mom's white.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about the outsiders. We talked about putting kids in a circle on a regular basis and hashing things out before you do other things. So I have a couple of ideas. And this is more just about this controversy, but it could be applied to others as well. Let's say that you have kids that are just, there's an old expression. When it comes to this issue, there's more heat than light.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Like that expression.
So one great thing to do is just, let's talk data, man. Let's talk some data here. And one of the interesting things about this issue are the amazing trade-offs that are going to happen as a result. The amazing choices that people are being forced to make. Now, you can say whatever you want about Colin Kaepernick, agree with him or not, but that man has paid an enormous financial price for his decision.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't tell me that he is not as good as some of the other quarterbacks in the league. I mean, I'm not buying that. I mean, based on pure numbers, that's not the case. So there's Colin Kaepernick and the amazing trade-offs and the decisions he's made. The NFL is freaked out legitimately about this issue because the President of the United States came on and said, boycott this private industry. That's powerful. That's going to have an impact on people. I don't see any way that the NFL is not hurt financially as a result of this. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I would like to see the trade-offs. If you had kids investigate the trade-offs that league owners are making in regard to A, Colin Kaepernick, B, whether they should have a rule that players have to stand, how it's going to affect the bottom line. I think those are great ways to get kids out of the heat and have them look at the subject objectively. If you start just talking about numbers and just start talking about economic trade-offs. And then the other idea I had on this, and this one's powerful, and I want to set it up just briefly. I teach in a community where religion is powerful, and we have some pretty outspoken supporters of the nation of Israel, which everyone has an absolute right to do. But we did this little project where we're looking at the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and I had the kids assume a role in a simulation, and so they have to go home and research that role. And there was a family who was upset that I assigned their son the role of looking at things from the Palestinian standpoint, which was really frustrating to me because it's like, come on, man. I mean, I'm not saying that he should convert to Islam. I'm just saying that he should understand a little bit more about this conflict that you all are so passionate about. Yeah. So I think that would be helpful too. And the way I would have redone that assignment is have students create a dialogue between two opposing people on the side of an issue. So if you were to force a student, and it might be forcing because a lot of kids are reluctant to try to consider another perspective, if you were to force the kids to maybe set up a dialogue between a person who is an African-American NFL athlete and perhaps someone who is very passionate about the fact that they should stand during the National Anthem, and try to get them to research those positions and say coherent things that that person would actually say, that can help get kids out of their perspective. And then the final thing that I want to say is the one thing that's really maddening for me, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is kids just throw out a lot of anecdotal statements in these debates. For instance, I had a student say, well, Colin Kaepernick just hates America. It's like, well, you might think that, but what's your evidence on that?
Right.
Did you have any sources that are legitimate sources that would reinforce that statement? So a lot of times I think if teachers could get kids to get out of the anecdotal statements, my dad said this at a bar one night, those type of statements. My dad said this, he was furious at the table. If you could get them to go back and try to find evidence for those positions, that helps too.
I think so.
And then you want to add.
I would say that, the biggest step earlier, we have to educate our teachers and our leaders in schools. And I think they would do well to do the same exercise. To be honest, because we think that we know it all, and we're watching CNN or we're watching Fox News, and we know it. Well, you don't know these men that are choosing to kneel.
No.
Most people don't. They don't know anything about them. They don't know how much of their millions of dollars that they give back to their community, and they do not know their motivation. They stereotype them. And I've heard that. I've heard that as well as these self-indulging millionaires, whatever. What have to do with them kneeling? Are you just upset that we have so many of these black men that are millionaires because of their sport? Is that the upsetting? Is that the upsetting part because they have more money than you?
No, the school where you work now, the school where I work now. I mean, I hear this.
I hear it from. Well, I don't hear it so much around me because I think people are.
They're leery.
They're leery.
Yeah.
But they don't have to. I love a conversation about it.
Yeah.
But I definitely hear it with our kids.
Right.
I hear kids talking. I've heard kids at my boys' school talk about this issue. The kids are talking. And as educators, if we put our head in the sand and not address being culturally responsive when we teach, when we lead with the code switching, I think we are missing the boat. And that keeps us from having those authentic relationships with our kids.
Right. Well,
so it's tough to have these kinds of conversations.
I want to back you up because that's been my experience that kids are easier to deal with this stuff. They're more open-minded than their moms and dads. So that's probably the same for the teachers in the building. They're just not as, I don't know, maybe I'm just going off on
no, but I think
that adults are just not as receptive.
Great exercise if they would do that, though. I think it's a wonderful exercise for adults to do as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be thrilled with me coming in and sitting.
I'd love to be in that session.
Let's do this during our conference period in the teacher's lounge.
I'd love to be in that session.
All right. We need some resources.
Yes.
You got some?
I got some. Look, if you are listening and you are wanting, needing, hungry for help, especially when it comes to having these conversations with your staff, if you're a leader, if you're a district leader with your principals, then definitely reach out to me. You can follow me on Twitter. You can DM me there as well. And my Twitter is Gross Taylor, MGROSSTALOR.
And it'll all be on the show notes, I promise. Keep going.
And then you can also go to my website. I have MarlenaGrossTaylor.com. And then also, if you are willing and ready to wear the white hat for our students and advocate for them in our teaching profession, you definitely want to be a part of the EduGladiators movement. You can go to edugladiators.com. We're on Facebook, on Instagram. We're on Twitter as well. We are all about ushering in this new era, my friend, of leadership, of engagement of our students and our teachers, and of advocacy. Because if we don't stand up for our kids, we're not setting them up for success. If they do not have EduGladiators at their back, lifting them up, if we are not those EduGladiators at their backs, lifting them up, and we are not setting them up for success.
I want to end this with a powerful conversation you and I had one time. I think it was over pancakes. How's that for anticlimactic?
Oh, yeah, that was great. Yeah, that's great conversation.
I thought it was like, so a glass of wine.
Pancakes.
No, it was over pancakes.
Breakfast.
So here's the thing, man. I asked Marlena, because she talked a little bit about her childhood, and I asked her this question, and I said, now your mom and dad grew up in a different America, and your kids are growing up in a different America than you did. When you were a kid, did your mom and dad ever say something like, you're lucky. When I was your age, we had to contend with this. And Marlena said, all the time. So the good news is, I think we're evolving as a society, and we're going to
get there. You know, the road to success is never easy, and it's not quick. You know, and we are definitely a work in progress. I do believe that, that there's good in people, and that the few that are being so vocal right now, they don't speak for every single person. In America, the few that are closed-minded, I pray for them daily. because they don't speak for the good of everyone else and the friends that I have of all colors, all ethnicities.
Yeah.
We can do this together. We have to.
Well, I love you, friend,
I
love talking to you. And you go, like who do you cheer for college-wise, man? LSU Tigers,
LSU,
right?
Oh my gosh, LSU and Navy.
Well,
Navy.
Yeah, that's right. So who do the Tigers have today?
The Tigers are playing a small team today, so it should be, if they're playing Troy, it should be a blowout. I expect it to be a blowout. And I think Navy comes on at 2:30 today, so we'll watch that as a family too and take care of that. So
All right. Well, you tell everyone hello, and I'll be down in Nashville soon, and we'll get together and throw down some pancakes.
Awesome. Thanks, my friend. So fun.
Yes. So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. I just love this episode. I love talking to Marlena, but I think it's important to address these topics. And I hope that our conversation is going to help you interact with your students about these contentious issues. And as Marlena said, man, have the courage to take things like this on in class. This is where kids are. This is the relevant stuff. This is what makes education real. As far as concrete directives for tomorrow, the one thing that Marlena was passionate about, and I back her up, man, is you have to work on your kids working on their ability to communicate with one another. And that might mean some discomfort. And that might mean some practice, some trial and error. And that might mean some feelings get hurt occasionally, but get those feelings out there. I liked how she had her kids get in a circle and talk things over on a regular basis. That ain't easy. That takes courage. But the payoffs are huge. She also talked about this concept of code switching. And I'm telling you, man, if you're going to talk about racial issues in your class, investigate the concept of code switching. I'll leave a great lesson plan on my show notes. She also talked about a resource called The Outsiders, which is something that I think you should investigate as potentially a vehicle to elicit these great conversations. And then I talked about some ideas about taking the emotional side out and maybe having kids investigate things from a data standpoint, maybe some of the trade-offs involved in any type of dispute. I like the idea of putting together a dialogue between opposing sides where students have to actually research what is taking place, why someone feels the way they do, and then articulate that. And finally, when kids make passionate statements, which is absolutely fine, they need to have some evidence behind it other than just anecdotal expressions. That's part of evolving as an intellectual, and that's what we need to help our kids do. And good luck tomorrow engaging your students.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesallansturtevant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.